Hello everyone, my name is Rick van Bruggen from Neotechnology, and here I am again recording a podcast for our graph database Neo4j podcast series. And today I have a guest joining me on Skype all the way from Poland. Hello Jaroslaw Palka.
Hello.
Hi, and thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Jaroslaw, so you've been in the Neo4j ecosystem for a while. Do you mind introducing yourself and what's your relationship to the wonderful world of graph databases?
Okay, so I work in Krakow and I'm with JVM and Java for the last, I think, since '99, and I work mainly as an architect and coach, doing technical trainings for people and supporting organizations. So my journey with graphs, I think it started in 2005 or 6. It's hard to remember all of the dates where we were trying, in one of the organizations, we are trying to migrate a large database which was supporting the online flight shopping. So basically searching for flights, the best flights, the shortest or the cheapest flights. And we were trying to migrate this from the relational database world to the graphs. Because what we found out is basically the structure we are working with is a graph. And the problems we are solving is, the typical graphs problem. So finding the shortest, the cheapest. Basically it is not always shortest path. It's sometimes, you are looking for the quickest flight. So you don't have a lot of stops, or you are looking for a cheapest flight, or you are looking for the flight when you fly with specific airlines or.
So that sort of that use case sort of got you going in the world of graph databases, and then you've done some other use cases as well, right? You're telling me about recommendations, access control, all of that wonderful stuff as well. Right?
Yes, the problem is that when you start with it, from my perspective, after first project, I started to see graphs everywhere. And everything in my life started to be either a node or the edge.
I know the feeling, Jaroslaw.
So I think this is one of so-called dangers of graph databases and thinking in graphs, that it is pretty easy to translate your problem into the structure of graph. And I think this is the most appealing thing for me, that you don't need specialized training and you don't need to read tons of books about the model, because it is so natural to think about things this way.
Well, that sort of leads me into like the second topic that I always ask on this podcast series. What do you like about graphs? What is so good about it in your opinion? I'm hearing the modeling advantages that you just mentioned right there. Want to give us your perspective there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So for first, modeling, and it is also important that it is quite easy. If you don't get into much details about, the directed, undirected graphs, hypergraphs, and all this stuff, and just focus on graphs, you can explain to a non-technical person how it works.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy. So when you work with business people, you quite soon get common vocabulary. So it is really easy to explain. You don't need advanced modeling tools and just whiteboard and brain to start drawing and planning the graph.
Yep.
The second thing, which is really close to my heart, I truly believe in emergent architecture. So I don't believe we can plan everything ahead of time. And in our world, when the requirements change fast and customers sometimes doesn't really know what he needs, and we discover what he needs over the time. One wonderful thing is that I can build my initial structure, connections and nodes, and during the time I can evolve the structure of the graph. So especially when the one thing I like is the graphs really start pretty simple,
Yep.
but as I start to write queries in Cypher to it, I start to see that there are actually connections I haven't seen, so I can materialize these connections.
Yeah.
And enrich my graph with additional connections or additional nodes, just to make sure that my Cypher query is the fastest possible query I can have. So
it's actually a really good match with things like agile development methodologies and those types of things. Is that what I'm hearing?
yes, this is for me really important. That I don't have to plan everything ahead, and I can build the queries, build the database as I need, as the project changes.
I think that's a really cool perspective. I think you're totally right about it. So yeah, I really appreciate that. So where do you think this is going, Jaroslav? Do you have any wishes or ideas about where this technology should be going in the next couple of years? Anything you want to throw in there?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest challenge, and it's not only the Neo4j problem, but because let's be honest, it's not the only graph database engine in the world.
No. Yeah.
But for me it's the best because I really like Cypher, and this is, I think, that was the one of the best decisions to build language. Yeah. Based on patterns to query the database. I think the problem with the graph model, and we all need to really hard think about it, is the size of the data sets we are dealing with. So as you know, we don't have a good way to split a graph into subgraphs, having these things on the separate machines, and because of the connected nature of the data, we need to be able to squeeze our data set onto one machine.
You're talking about graph partitioning, right?
I think it's not. We don't have a good algorithms for it developed still, so. So no strong theoretical foundation. So I think the guys from academia needs to meet with the people who work with
there's
graphs.
been a lot of work that's been done around partitioning specific graphs, right? So in the general case, it's extremely difficult, and you can actually almost prove that it's impossible. But there has been a lot of work, and also at Neo4j on coming up with partitioning algorithms that would be specific to your domain, right? So if you would tell us more about your data, then we would be able to make much more sensible judgment about where the data should go on which machine. And as you know, you probably know we've done a lot of work on it already, and we're hoping that that will lead into a good product in the future version of Neo4j, but it is early days still. It's a very complicated.
It is pretty easy to partition in case you will treat your database, the graph database, Neo4j database, as a usual data source for for example, web application. So I think it would be easier, but if you have the partitioned data and you want to run the shortest possible path over the whole graph, that can be a tricky.
As soon as you hit the machine boundary, you have a problem, right? So it's a very difficult problem to solve. We are trying to make a solid dent into that problem, and there's a lot of work going into that. People like Jim Weber are really actively involved with that. But I think it's a difficult one from multiple perspectives. On the one hand, and this is just my personal perspective, right? But on the one hand, there's this hugely complicated problem, right? And on the other hand, you have a situation where the vast majority of users and clients don't really need that. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's true, and this is really one important thing. When, for example, one hard lesson from my first Neo4j project is that we pushed all the data we had in SQL, because it was basically migration from the SQL to Neo4j. So we pushed everything to Neo4j. And I think it was the biggest single mistake, one of the biggest single mistakes in my life, because actually you don't need everything.
Well, that's
I
it, right?
truly believe in a polyglot persistence.
Yep.
So, you push to the graph only the data you will need during the queries. And all the additional heavy things you can have in separate store. So you can manage, and whereas, fortunately we are in a place where people start to think that having 2-3 different databases in a single system is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
that's
where I
completely along the
see
line.
at the moment Neo4j as a.
That's completely along the lines that we're thinking. Combine different data stores for different problem sets and have a much more task-oriented setup. I think that's very much a recurring design pattern, I think.
Yeah. So, basically this is the pattern I see these days, that, Neo4j is quite often used as a supplementary database, like a, really tricky index that can do weird things. So people have their main SQL databases and they are feeding the many Neo4j instances, and they are asking different questions because they have different structures in place. So at the moment, this is where I see organizations are playing with Neo4j, as an engine which you can ask really tricky questions. So if you are asking about the future, I think the next step is to, push organizations to think that actually, the graph database can be your master data model. Mm-hmm. Because at the moment it's mostly SQL, and the database, the name we shouldn't use,
yes.
is controlling this space, and all the things like Mongo, Neo4j, Cassandra are just supplementary for the SQL model. So.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that. I think that was very, very interesting and useful. I really appreciate it. And I think we're going to wrap up the podcast now, and I look forward to speaking to you again at one of the future events.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jaroslaw.
Yeah. Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye.